Dramily.com, unlimited drama series.
The bistro smelled like overpriced wine and broken promises. I stood in the doorway, scanning the room until I spotted her. Vanessa sat at the largest table in the center, surrounded by her usual pack of vultures. 7 women, all dressed like they were auditioning for a reality show, all hanging on every word that dripped from my wife's perfectly glossed lips. "Evan," Vanessa called out, her voice carrying that fake sweetness she'd perfected over our 8 years of marriage. "Come meet the girls." The girls, as if any of them were under 35, as if any of them had a genuine thought in their surgically enhanced heads. I walked over, my work boots clicking against the polished floor. Every eye at that table tracked my movement, like I was some exotic animal that had wandered into their pristine habitat. My hands still carried the honest dirt of a construction site. My jeans bore the marks of real work, and I could feel their collective judgment washing over me like a cold shower. "Ladies," I nodded, taking the empty chair they'd left for me. The chair positioned perfectly, so I'd have my back to most of the restaurant. So I'd be the outsider looking in at their little circle. Serena, Vanessa's best friend and personal attorney, leaned forward with that predatory smile she'd worn since law school. "We were just talking about our upcoming trip to Napa. Girls' Week, you know how it is." I knew exactly how it was. 3 months of planning, $5,000 from our joint savings, and not once had Vanessa asked if I minded funding her escape from our marriage. "Sounds expensive," I said, keeping my voice level. Vanessa's laugh tinkled like breaking glass. "Oh, Evan worries about money. Blue-collar mentality, you understand." The table erupted in knowing giggles. Brianna, the real estate agent with the fake tan, nodded sympathetically. "Men just don't understand that we need these experiences. We need to grow as women." "Exactly," Tessa chimed in, her yoga instructor flexibility apparently extending to moral gymnastics. "Marriage shouldn't hold us back from living our best lives." I watched Vanessa's face as her friends spoke. Watched the way her eyes lit up with each barb thrown in my direction. Watched the way she leaned into their validation like a plant turning toward poisonous sunlight. "You know what your problem is, Evan." Vanessa set down her wineglass with deliberate precision. The conversation at nearby tables seemed to quiet, as if the entire restaurant sensed something shifting in the air. "Enlighten me," I said. Her smile widened, showing teeth that had cost me 6 months of overtime. "You're just not worth my time anymore." The words hung in the air like smoke from a house fire. 7 faces turned toward me, waiting for my reaction, waiting to see the blue-collar husband crumble under the weight of public humiliation. Instead, I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a thick envelope. Inside was $5,200 in cash. Money I'd been saving for months, skipping lunches and working weekends. Money that was supposed to be for our 10th anniversary trip to Ireland next year. I placed the envelope on the table, right next to Vanessa's wineglass. "Here's my contribution to your girls' trip," I said, my voice carrying clearly across the suddenly silent restaurant. "Enjoy it." The silence stretched like a rubber band ready to snap. Vanessa stared at the money, her mouth slightly open. Serena's predatory smile faltered. The other women looked between each other, unsure of what they'd just witnessed. I stood up slowly, deliberately. "Have a wonderful evening, ladies." As I walked toward the exit, I heard Serena's voice, pitched low but not low enough. "He knows something. He's going to ruin you." The restaurant door closed behind me with a soft chime, but inside my chest, something much louder was beginning to roar. My workshop in the basement had always been my sanctuary. Concrete floor, pegboard walls lined with tools, workbench scarred from years of honest projects. Tonight, it felt like a war room. The shoebox sat on my workbench like evidence in a criminal trial. Inside, nestled between tissue paper and lies, was Vanessa's second phone. A sleek little device she thought she'd hidden so cleverly behind her winter boots. I'd found it 3 weeks ago, purely by accident. Looking for my old steel-toed boots, I'd knocked over her shoebox and watched a phone tumble out like a confession. The same model as her regular phone, but this one had a different case, pink instead of purple. Pink like the lipstick she'd started wearing lately. Pink like the lingerie I'd found in our laundry that I'd never seen her wear. Mike knocked on the workshop door at exactly 9 p.m., just like we'd planned. "You sure about this, buddy?" he asked, descending the stairs with 2 cups of coffee from the diner. Mike had been my right-hand man for 6 years, ever since I'd started Riley Construction. He was the kind of guy who'd help you move a body and never ask questions, though tonight we were just moving the truth around. "I'm sure," I said, powering up the phone. "Password protected. Just like I figured. Good thing my cousin Jimmy owes me a favor. Mike pulled out a small device that looked like something from a spy movie. Its specialist has his perks. 20 minutes later, we were in. The phone opened like a book of secrets, each page more revealing than the last. Text messages that made my stomach clench. Photos that redefined betrayal. Call logs that painted a picture of deception stretching back 8 months. Chase Donnelly. That was the name that appeared most frequently. Chase Donnelly, the tech consultant who'd been helping Vanessa's company upgrade their systems. Chase Donnelly, who apparently had been upgrading more than just software. This guy's got some nerve, Mike muttered, scrolling through messages. Listen to this. Can't wait until you're free of that construction worker. You deserve so much better. I took a long sip of coffee, letting the bitterness ground me. Keep reading. The messages got worse. Plans to drain our joint accounts. Discussions about how to make me look bad in a divorce. Strategies for claiming I was controlling, abusive, neglectful. They'd been building a case against me for months, constructing lies with the same precision I used to build houses. There's more, Mike said, his voice grim. Look at this. The photo made everything clear. Vanessa and Chase at Murphy's Bar, the local dive where I sometimes grabbed a burger after work. They were in a corner booth, hands all over each other, her wedding ring nowhere to be seen. The timestamp showed last Tuesday night, when she'd told me she was working late on quarterly reports. My phone buzzed. A text from Vanessa. Don't wait up. Girls' night running late. I showed the message to Mike. He shook his head slowly. What's the plan, Evan? I looked around my workshop, at the tools that had built my business, at the projects that had filled our home with custom cabinets and built-in shelves. Everything I'd created with my hands. Everything I'd built for us. First, we document everything. Screenshots, copies, backups. Then we track them. Track them? I pulled out a small GPS device I'd ordered online. Chase drives a BMW. Vanessa thinks she's so smart, but she doesn't know that I know where they go every Thursday night. Mike grinned for the first time all evening. You want me to handle the technical stuff? I want you to handle everything technical. Phone records, financial records, social media accounts. I want to know what they had for breakfast and how much they tipped the waitress. We worked until midnight, building our case like we'd build a foundation. Solid, thorough, unshakable. By the time Mike left, we had enough evidence to sink a battleship. I climbed the stairs to find Vanessa already in bed, pretending to sleep. Her breathing was too controlled, too perfect. Real sleep is messier, more honest. How was girls' night? I asked quietly. Fine, she mumbled into her pillow. Boring, really. Just dinner and conversation. I stood in the doorway for a long moment, watching my wife lie to me with the same mouth that had kissed another man 6 hours ago. Tomorrow, I'd start building something new. Not a house this time, but a reckoning. Vanessa's office building was all glass and steel, the kind of modern architecture that looked impressive but had no soul. I'd helped build the parking structure 2 years ago, back when she was proud to tell her coworkers that her husband's company had contributed to their workplace. Now, as I walked through the lobby at 10 a.m. on a Thursday, I wondered if she'd even acknowledge knowing me. The elevator ride to the 5th floor gave me time to review my strategy. In my briefcase were printed copies of every text message, every photo, every piece of evidence Mike and I had compiled over the past 2 weeks. But more importantly, I had Vanessa's own company handbook, specifically page 47, which clearly outlined their policy regarding relationships with vendors and contractors. Chase Donnelly wasn't just Vanessa's lover. He was a contracted consultant, which made their relationship a violation of company policy. A firing offense, according to the handbook she'd brought home last year with such pride. The receptionist, a young woman with kind eyes, looked up as I approached. Can I help you? I'm here to see Vanessa Riley. I'm her husband. Oh, Mr. Riley, she's mentioned you. Let me call her. While she dialed, I noticed the family photo on Vanessa's desk through the glass partition of her office. Our wedding picture. Both of us smiling like we believed in forever. Next to it sat a coffee mug I'd given her last Christmas. World's best wife. The irony tasted bitter. She'll be right out, the receptionist said. Vanessa appeared a moment later, her professional mask firmly in place. Evan, what a surprise. Is everything all right? We need to talk, privately. Her smile flickered. I'm quite busy today. Can this wait until tonight? No, it can't. Something in my tone must have warned her, because her shoulders tensed. Of course, my office. She led me into her glass-walled office, closing the door behind us. Through the windows, I could see her coworkers pretending not to watch, while obviously listening for any raised voices. What's this about? She asked, settling behind her desk like it was a fortress. I opened my briefcase and pulled out the first document, a printed screenshot of her text conversation with Chase from 2 nights ago. The one where they discussed meeting at his downtown loft after her boring dinner with the girls. Her face went white. Where did you get this? Does it matter? I placed another document on her desk. Here's your company's policy on vendor relationships, page 47. I thought you might want to review it. She snatched up the papers, her hands shaking slightly. You went through my phone? I went through your second phone, the pink one you keep hidden behind your winter boots. The color drained completely from her face. Through the glass walls, I could see her boss, Mr. Patterson, approaching with what looked like quarterly reports. Evan, please, she whispered. We can work this out. Like you worked out draining our savings account. Like you worked out your exit strategy with Chase. Mr. Patterson knocked on the door. Vanessa looked at me with panic in her eyes, but I was already standing, already moving toward the door. Come in, I called out, opening the door for her boss. I'm sorry to interrupt, Patterson said, glancing between us. Vanessa, I need your signature on these reports, and I wanted to discuss the Donnelly contract renewal. Actually, I said, you might want to review these first. I handed him copies of the text messages and photos. I think you'll find them relevant to any contract decisions. Patterson's expression shifted as he scanned the documents. His eyebrows climbed higher with each page. Mr. Riley, Vanessa started, but I was already walking away. Have a good day, honey, I called back. Don't wait up tonight. I have plans. The elevator doors closed on Vanessa's horrified face and her boss's grim expression. By the time I reached the parking garage, my phone was buzzing with frantic calls from my wife. I let them go to voicemail. Mike was waiting in his truck at the construction site when I arrived. How'd it go? Phase 1 complete. How about your end? He held up his phone, showing me a video he'd recorded from across the street. Got everything. Chase showed up at her office building about 10 minutes after you left. Looked pretty upset when he came back out. Good. He should be upset. His contract just got terminated. What's phase 2? I looked out at the half-finished office building we were constructing, at the honest work that had always defined me. Tomorrow, I'd be back here with my crew, building something solid and real. But tonight, I had a different kind of construction project. Tonight, we build a trap. Murphy's bar hadn't changed in 20 years. Same sticky floors, same neon beer signs, same jukebox playing songs from when the world made more sense. It was exactly the kind of place Vanessa's crowd would never set foot in, which made it perfect for what I had planned. Carla, the owner, was polishing glasses behind the bar when I walked in at 7 p.m. She'd been running Murphy's since her husband passed 5 years ago, and in that time she'd become the unofficial keeper of the town's secrets. If you wanted to know who was cheating, who was going broke, or who was about to get arrested, you bought Carla a drink and waited. Evan Reilly, she said, not looking up from her glass. Heard you had an interesting day. News travels fast. Honey, in this town, news travels at the speed of gossip, and your wife's little workplace drama is the hottest story since the mayor's son got caught with those parking meters. I took a seat at the bar. What are you hearing? Carla set down her glass and really looked at me for the first time. I'm hearing that Vanessa Riley got herself fired today. I'm hearing that her boyfriend lost a very lucrative contract, and I'm hearing that you had something to do with both. You hear correctly. She poured me a whiskey without being asked. You planning something stupid? I'm planning something necessary. The bar door opened, and Mike walked in with a cardboard box under his arm. Behind him came 3 more of my crew, Tommy, Rick, and Dave. Good men, honest workers, the kind of guys who understood loyalty. Evening, Carla, Mike said, setting the box on the bar. Mind if we use your back room for a little gathering? Depends what kind of gathering. I stood up, raising my glass. The kind where a man tells the truth about his marriage. Words spread through the bar like spilled beer. Within an hour, Murphy's was packed with more people than it had seen since the Super Bowl. Construction workers, shop owners, retirees, even Mrs. Peabody from my neighborhood, clutching her purse like it contained state secrets. Tommy had connected his laptop to the bar's old TV, and the screen now displayed a slideshow that Mike had prepared. Photos, text messages, financial records. The whole sordid story of my wife's betrayal, presented with the thoroughness of a criminal investigation. "Ladies and gentlemen," I announced, standing on a chair so everyone could see me, "I want to tell you about my wife's girls' trip to Napa Valley." The crowd quieted, sensing drama. "See, Vanessa's been planning this trip for months. $5,000 of our money, spent on bonding with her closest friends. Except there's one problem." I clicked to the next slide, showing bank records. The money didn't go to Napa Valley. It went to Chase Donnelly's credit card, to pay for a romantic weekend in Boston. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Mrs. Peabody gasped audibly. "But wait, there's more," I continued, clicking to the text messages. "It turns out the girls' trip was never about female friendship. It was about planning my wife's exit strategy." I read selected messages aloud, watching faces in the crowd shift from curiosity to
A second Instagram, 47 posts, all of her. You built her a shrine. You posted her on my birthday.
Watch more on Grammarly.com.
outrage. These were working people, honest people, who understood the value of marriage vows and shared bank accounts. The bar door burst open, and Serena strutted in like she owned the place. Behind her came three of Vanessa's other friends, Brianna, Tessa, and Morgan. They looked around Murphy's like they'd stumbled into a sewage treatment plant. "What is this?" Serena demanded, her lawyer voice cutting through the crowd noise. "This," I said, "is the truth. You can't do this, Evan. This is harassment. This is public information," Mike interrupted, holding up a folder. "Divorce filings are public record. So are criminal complaints." "Criminal complaints?" Serena's confidence wavered. I clicked to the next slide. "Bank records showing systematic withdrawals from our joint accounts, all authorized by Vanessa's forged signature on my behalf. Turns out my wife's been practicing my signature. That's called fraud." The crowd was getting restless now, sensing that the entertainment was about to get even better. Carla moved behind the bar, ready to cut off anyone who got too excited. "You're pathetic," Brianna spat, her real estate agent's smile nowhere to be seen. "Vanessa deserves better than this." "Funny you should say that," I replied, clicking to a new slide. "Because according to these text messages, Vanessa's been saying the same thing about Chase. Apparently she's been telling him that you've been throwing yourself at him every time your husband's out of town." Brianna's face went scarlet. "That's not true. Screenshot doesn't lie." The image on the screen showed Vanessa's message to Chase. "Brianna was all over you at the Christmas party. So embarrassing. Some women have no shame." Tessa stepped forward, her yoga-toned arms crossed defensively. "You're taking those messages out of context." "Am I?" I clicked again. "Here's Vanessa talking about your husband's drinking problem, and here's her discussing Morgan's credit card situation. Oh, and this one's interesting. She's telling Chase that Serena's been skimming money from client accounts." The silence in the bar was deafening. Serena's face had gone from angry to terrified in the span of 10 seconds. "Those are privileged communications," she stammered. "Between my wife and her boyfriend? I don't think privilege applies." Mrs. Peabody stood up from her corner table, clutching her purse tighter. "I have something to add," she announced in her wavering voice. The entire bar turned to look at the 78-year-old woman who'd lived next door to me for 6 years. "I've been watching that house," she said, pointing a gnarled finger at me. "Watching and listening. That girl's been having men over when Evan's at work. Not just one man, multiple men." The crowd erupted in whispers and gasps. I stared at Mrs. Peabody, genuinely surprised. "Multiple men?" I asked. She nodded vigorously. "The fancy one with the BMW, yes. But also the mailman, the pool cleaner, and that boy who delivers groceries. I got pictures." She reached into her purse and pulled out a digital camera, holding it up like evidence in a trial. The bar exploded into chaos. Serena and the other women tried to retreat toward the door, but the crowd was too thick, too interested in seeing how this drama would end. My phone buzzed. A text from Vanessa. "Come home. We need to talk." I held up the phone for everyone to see. "Ladies and gentlemen, my wife wants to talk." The crowd roared its approval. Carla rang the bell behind the bar, the signal for last call, but nobody was leaving. "Tell her," someone shouted from the back. "Tell her Murphy's is closed for private parties." I typed back, "I'm busy," having the time of my life. And for the first time in months, that wasn't a lie. Chase Donnelly's BMW was parked outside the downtown loft when I drove by at 11 p.m. The building was one of those converted warehouses, all exposed brick and floor-to-ceiling windows, the kind of place that screamed, "I make too much money and have no taste." I parked 3 blocks away and walked back, keeping to the shadows. Mike's GPS tracker was still attached under Chase's rear bumper, invisible unless you knew where to look. For 2 weeks, we'd been monitoring his movements, learning his patterns, understanding his weaknesses. The man was predictable. Gym at 6 a.m., coffee shop at 7:30, office by 9, lunch at the same trendy bistro every day at noon. He was the kind of guy who thought routine was sophistication, who confused expensive with valuable. My phone buzzed. A text from Mike. "He's on the move, heading your direction." I ducked into an alley between buildings, pressing myself against the brick wall. Chase's BMW rounded the corner 2 minutes later, moving fast, too fast for downtown streets. He was either angry or scared, maybe both. He pulled into the parking garage across from his loft, tires squealing slightly on the concrete ramps. I waited 30 seconds, then followed on foot. The parking garage was dimly lit, filled with shadows, and the echo of my footsteps. I found Chase's car on the 3rd level, parked crooked across 2 spaces like he'd been in a hurry. I was examining the GPS tracker when I heard footsteps behind me. "I thought I might find you here." I turned around slowly. Chase stood about 10 feet away, still wearing his expensive suit but looking rumpled, desperate. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his tie loosened. "Evening, Chase. You ruined my life today." I straightened up, keeping my hands visible and relaxed. "I didn't ruin anything. I just revealed what was already there. I lost my contract. Vanessa lost her job. We lost everything. You lost what you stole." He took a step closer, and I could see the rage in his eyes. "You think you're so clever, don't you? The wronged husband, getting his revenge. I think I'm a man who found out his wife was cheating and decided to do something about it. She never loved you." The words came out like poison. "She told me everything. How boring you are, how small your dreams are, how embarrassed she was to be married to a construction worker." Each word was designed to hurt, to provoke me into doing something stupid. But I'd spent 20 years in construction, dealing with difficult contractors, angry clients, and workplace conflicts. I knew how to stay calm when someone was trying to get under my skin. "Did she tell you about the other men?" Chase's expression flickered. "What other men?" "The mailman, the pool cleaner, the grocery delivery guy. Mrs. Peabody has pictures." His face went pale. "You're lying." "Am I? When's the last time Vanessa answered her phone when you called? When's the last time she was available when you wanted to see her?" I could see him thinking, remembering, connecting dots he'd been too arrogant to notice before. "She played you, Chase, just like she played me. The only difference is, I was smart enough to figure it out." He lunged at me then, all technique and no strategy. I'd been expecting it. I stepped aside, letting his momentum carry him past me, then grabbed his arm and used his own weight to slam him against his precious BMW. "Easy," I said, keeping my voice calm. "Easy." He struggled for a moment, then went limp. "She said she loved me. She said she loved me too. 8 years ago, in front of 300 people." I let him go and stepped back. He slumped against his car, looking smaller somehow, diminished. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now you disappear, you leave town, you start over somewhere else, and you never contact my wife again. And if I don't?" I pulled out my phone and showed him a video Mike had taken earlier that evening. Chase entering Vanessa's office building after hours, using a keycard that should have been deactivated when his contract was terminated. "That's breaking and entering," I said. "Plus whatever you took from her office. I'm guessing client files, maybe financial records. Things you thought might be useful for your next job." His shoulders sagged in defeat. "I'll be gone by Friday," he said quietly. "Good choice." I walked away, leaving him there in the dim parking garage, with his expensive car and his shattered illusions. As I reached the stairwell, I heard him call out, "Evan!" I turned back. "She really did love you, you know, at the beginning, before everything got complicated." "I know," I said. "That's what makes this so sad." The stairwell door closed behind me with a metallic clang, and I began the long walk back to my truck. Tomorrow, Chase would start packing. By Friday, he'd be gone, taking his BMW and his broken dreams to some other city, some other life, but Vanessa would still be here, and we still had unfinished business. The annual Founders' Day festival transformed our town square into something from a Norman Rockwell painting. If Norman Rockwell had painted revenge served on a paper plate, with a side of public humiliation, white tents lined the streets, selling everything from handmade quilts to kettle corn. The bandstand in the center of the square hosted local musicians, though today it would feature a different kind of performance. I arrived at noon, wearing my best jeans and a clean work shirt. Mike was already there with his laptop and a portable speaker, setting up near the bandstand like he was preparing for a legitimate presentation. "You sure about this?" he asked as I approached. Never been more sure of anything. The crowd was building steadily. Families with children, elderly couples sharing funnel cake, teenagers trying to look bored while secretly enjoying themselves. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that they were about to witness the final act of my marriage. Mrs. Peabody appeared at my elbow, clutching her digital camera like a weapon. "I brought the pictures," she whispered conspiratorially. "Thank you, Mrs. Peabody. You're a good neighbor." "That woman never deserved you," she said firmly. "I've been married 62 years, and I know a bad wife when I see one." At 12:30, I spotted Vanessa near the craft tent, flanked by Serena and two other survivors from her social circle. She looked haggard, her usual polish replaced by the desperate shine of someone fighting for survival. When she saw me, her face hardened. She marched over with her remaining allies in tow, stopping just close enough to speak without shouting. "What do you want, Evan?" "I want to talk." "We have nothing to talk about." "We have 8 years to talk about. We have a house, bank accounts, and a marriage certificate to talk about." Serena stepped forward, trying to insert herself between us. "My client has nothing to say to you without legal representation present." "Your client," I said, "might want to reconsider her choice of legal representation." I nodded to Mike, who pressed a button on his laptop. The portable speaker crackled to life, and Serena's voice filled the air around us. "We need to be smart about this. If we can make Evan look unstable, maybe even abusive, Vanessa can claim fear for her safety. That way, she gets the house, alimony, and a clean exit." The blood drained from Serena's face as her own voice continued. "I know a guy who can create documentation, medical records, police reports that were never filed. It'll cost, but it's cheaper than losing half of everything." A crowd was gathering around us now, drawn by the drama and the amplified conversation. Vanessa looked around frantically, realizing that her private strategy session was being broadcast to half the town. "Turn that off," she hissed. "Why?" I asked. "It's just getting to the good part." Serena's recorded voice continued. "The key is making him react. If we can get him to lose his temper in public, especially in front of witnesses, we can claim a pattern of aggressive behavior." "This is illegal," Serena stammered. "You can't record private conversations." "I didn't," I said. "You did. That's your voice recorder, from your purse. Vanessa turned it on during your meeting, probably planning to use it against you later. She's been recording everyone, Serena. Insurance policies, she called them." I clicked to the next audio file, Vanessa's voice this time. "Serena thinks she's so smart, but she's been skimming from client accounts for years. I have copies of everything. If she ever tries to cross me, I'll destroy her." Serena's face went from pale to green. Around us, the crowd was growing larger, more interested. Someone had started recording with their phone. "Ladies and gentlemen," I announced, raising my voice to address the growing audience, "I'd like to tell you about my wife's business practices." "Stop," Vanessa pleaded, but her voice was lost in the crowd noise. Mike connected his laptop to the bandstand's sound system, and suddenly my voice was carrying across the entire festival. 8 years ago, I married a woman I thought I knew. I worked 60-hour weeks to build a business that could support our dreams. I saved money for vacations we never took, bought a house we turned into a home, and trusted someone who was planning my destruction from the moment she got bored. The festival had ground to a halt. Families gathered around the bandstand, children forgotten as parents focused on the unfolding drama. "But that's not the interesting part," I continued. "The interesting part is what happened when I found out." Images flashed on the screen behind me. Bank records, text messages, photographs. The whole sordid story, laid out like evidence in a trial. My wife didn't just cheat. She systematically planned to destroy my reputation, steal my assets, and frame me for crimes I didn't commit. And she did it with the help of friends who were supposed to care about her. I clicked to Mrs. Peabody's photographs. Clear images of Vanessa with multiple men, taken from her kitchen window, with the dedication of a private investigator. The crowd gasped. Someone in the back shouted, "Shame!" Vanessa tried to run, but the crowd was too thick. She found herself trapped in the center of the square, surrounded by neighbors who had just learned exactly what kind of person she really was. The good news, I continued, is that justice has a way of working itself out. My wife lost her job for violating company policy. Her boyfriend lost his contract and left town. And her lawyer is about to lose her license when the state bar reviews these recordings. Serena was backing away now, trying to escape before anyone connected her face to the voice on the recordings. But the best part, I said, clicking to the final slide, is that I get to start over. Clean slate, honest life, surrounded by people who understand the value of truth. The crowd erupted in applause. Not everyone was clapping. Some people looked uncomfortable with the public nature of the confrontation. But enough were cheering that it felt like vindication. Vanessa stood in the center of it all, tears streaming down her face, finally understanding that her carefully constructed world had collapsed completely. She tried to speak, tried to defend herself, but her voice was lost in the noise of judgment and celebration. I stepped down from the bandstand and walked over to her. The crowd quieted, sensing that the final moment was at hand. "You wanted freedom," I said, just loud enough for her to hear. "Here's your free fall." Then I walked away, leaving her there in the town square, surrounded by the wreckage of her own making. My phone buzzed as I reached my truck. A text from Vanessa. "Please, we can fix this." I deleted the message without responding and drove home to the house we'd shared, the house that was now just mine. Tonight, I'd sleep peacefully for the first time in months. Tomorrow, I'd start building something new. Dingtoritio liefend, stvorena, Belledrum, defined, is namen 2025, 12 hours, 10 minutes, and 17 seconds.